All right, so we're starting with number 14. And so this looks a little bit different, but all you're doing is you're factoring the numerator and then factoring the denominator. So what two numbers, or what number can go into both 16 and 4? 4. I'm going to divide 4 out. And you end up getting, 4 goes on the outside, and you get 4x squared minus 1. Now, you can either do your ACB chart and factor it, or we notice that both of these are perfect squares, right? And so since both of those are perfect squares, we can do that difference, since it's subtraction, of the perfect squares trick. So what I do is I take the square root of both of them, and it looks something like this. And so when you see a subtraction of two perfect squares, we're doing a plus and minus, and I remember Elijah asked this question, which was good. It doesn't matter which order you do the plus and minus in, it doesn't, which as long as you just have both. And then what is the square root of 4? 2. And the square root of x is just x, the square root of x squared is just x, so I put them both right there. What's the square root of 1? 1. Cool. So I'm done the numerator for now. Then I come over here at the denominator. Is there a number or a letter that goes into both 4x squared and 2x? 2x and what? 2, right? So 2x is your GCF, so that goes on the outside. Then we divide. So what is 4x squared divided by 2x? 2, just x, right? Because x squared minus an x just gives me x. What's 2x divided by 2x? 1, right? And the minus sign stays. I'm going to pause. So the first thing I did is I just took the GCF of the bottom one, and I basically factored the numerator and denominator separately. I'm not sure if you're going to see this on your test. I wasn't told that it's going to be on your test, but remember, I will never see the questions on your test. So I always want to over-prepare you, and since this wasn't a practice milestone, I want to make sure you're familiar with it. A lot of you are taking Algebra 2 next year. This will 110% be a lesson, so at least you'll know. So now, see how things are all being multiplied? What's anything divided by itself? 1. And it cancels out, right? So if anything divided by itself is 1, we could cancel it out. Is anything the same that I could cross out? 2x. 2x what? Has to be the whole thing. Minus 1. See how these two are the same? We could cross them out. Then we just reduce. What is 4 divided by 2? 2. So 2 is going to go on the top. X is still on the bottom. And what's left on the numerator right here? Yep. That's your answer. So I'm showing this to you. If you get it, cool. If you don't, it's okay. It will maybe be one question, if any. But I want to show it to you in case. Remember, I just get the list of standards and I teach to it. This is a standard that's in Algebra 2, but I'm not sure if it will be in Algebra 1, so I want to just show you. Does that make sense? Okay, does anyone need me to keep this up? So all I did was I factored the top and the bottom, right? And I got my factors right here. Then when you're dividing polynomials, all you do is you cross them out if they're the same. So see how 2x minus 1 and 2x minus 1 are the same? I could cross them out because anything divided by itself is just 1. We don't really need that 1. Then I just divided these. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And so if you want me to go over it, I can pull you in the back of community forums and we can go over it. But it's not the end of the world. You have community forums today.
Today?
Yeah. All right, next one. There's a few different things we can do. What can we do with this problem? How can we solve this? Plug it in. Plug it in. What could you plug in?
Well, you plug in 1.
1 for x. And what should your answer be? 32,000. Make sure you try both. So if I plugged in 1, let's try it. If I plug in 1 plus 32,000, do I get 32,000? 1 plus. No, right? Okay, 32,001. So I know that's not it. What about right here? What's 1 plus 28,000? Does that equal 32,000?
No.
No. What about 1 times 4,000? What's 1 times 4,000? Plus 32,000? Is that 32,000?
No.
No. And so 4,000 times 1 is 4,000 plus 28,000 ends up getting. So you can sit here, like how many people found the slope and then found the y-intercept? Or you can do that, see that scatter plot, that stat edit, and get put the A and the B. There's so many different ways to do it. But if they give you just a table and different equations, you can always plug in and figure out which one works. Does anyone want me to go over the slope formula where you go x1, y1, or sorry, x1, y1, x2, y2, plug it in?
No.
Okay. What does range mean? What letter? Y. So, which two can I eliminate off the bat? A and B. Eliminate them. Make sure you use that tool. Why look at it and confuse yourself? We know range is Y. Now, what's the smallest Y there is?
-2.
But that's domain. Remember, range is up and down. Yeah, so this is 1, and what's this one? 4. So what's your answer? Do you see how they're trying to trick you? Because range is up and down. They're like, oh, they're going to think it's side to side, but that would be your domain. Your range is like the smallest Y, the biggest Y. Does that make sense? All right, so this is the first dog is Sparky. Here's my little guy, Sparky. And he is 14.5 pounds, right? And so they're saying, what is the difference? What does difference mean? Subtract. I know I'm subtracting my answers. In the means. What is means? Average, right? Add them and divide by how many? Between the first 5 dogs, so these 5, and all 6 of them. So let's find the average of the first 5. So we add them all up, and you end up getting 156.5. And then we divide by how many there are. How many dogs are there? 5. And what answer do you end up getting? If anyone could have.
Oh, I got C.
For this one,
Wait, oh.
when you divide them, you end up getting 31.3. What do you notice is in the answer choices? 31.3. See, they're trying to trick us. But I know that we're looking for the difference. That's why you have that highlighting tool. It's important to use that so you know what we're looking for. Now I need to find the second mean. So I know the first 5 was 156.5 plus good old Sparky. What does Sparky weigh?
14.
And now how many dogs are there? 6. And you end up getting 28.5. What do you notice is in the answer choices?
28.
You see how they're trying to trick you? None of these answers are ever going to be random. And different means I subtract them. So what's 31.3 minus 28.5?
2.8.
So do you see how you know all this material? You just kind of bring it back to life and figure out what do I emphasize on and where can I plug it in so I don't waste time on harder problems. Because this one like isn't a plug it in, so you have to spend time. All right, zeros. What are like 5 different ways I can get this? Factoring. Plugging your answers in. You can put it in your calculator in that y equals and look at the table. When you're looking at the table, what is the y coordinate that you're looking for? What number is it? 0. So we're making zeros just means your y is 0. So if you're doing the plug it in version, which sometimes it could be like this, sometimes it could not, all you have to do is you take, instead of x, plug in 1 at a time if you are going to do this way. So don't plug in 4 and 3 if I'm using this. Plug in 1 number at a time. And when you do it, if the answer is 0, you know that's one of your x-intercepts. But notice, they have 4 in 2 different answers. So when I do this, it ends up equaling 0. So I know it can't be this. Be careful that you put parentheses around it. So if you don't put parentheses around it, it will probably never give you 0. Or you can factor it, which is the easiest way. So since it's a equals 1, what multiplies 12 and adds negative 7?
3 and 4.
So what multiplies 12 adds to negative 7 3 and 4, but what do we know they have to be to add to -7? Yep. Ding, ding, ding. How do I write those factors? So I do x minus 3 and x minus 4, and I heard opposite. Those are my factors. And then the answers, the solutions, zeros, are the opposite. So what's the opposite of -3 and -4? 3 and +3. So remember, there's more than like whatever different ways to get this. Everything in parentheses is always the opposite. So remember vertex form too? Like when I had something like this. So remember, this is vertex form. So remember the vertex, and you're given this form. The vertex, remember, minus h to the right, remember all that? It's always the opposite of what's in the parentheses. So what's the opposite of -3? +3, and the same as what's on the outside. That's vertex form. So I'm just showing you that to show if anything's in parentheses, it's always the opposite if it's talking about your actual coordinates. All right, next one. I equals P, and what are we looking for? It says solve for R. R. When three things are together, what does that mean?
They're
Multiply. So how do I get rid of them? Divide by B and T, right? I want them out of here. So what's my answer?
D.
I'm going to erase this. This one. Remember, this is not multiplying, this is adding. They have to have the same radical in order to add them. So do they have the same radical? Yes. Yep, so now I just add the outsides. What's 7 plus 3? 10. And what's the radical? 7. Do you see how they have 14 because they think you're going to add it? But you know better. They also have the answer to the multiplication. So if I multiplied it out, that answer would be right there at 70. So you want to make sure that you're adding and paying attention to this. Any questions? We're good? All right. Which is not a function. What's that test that we use to say if it's a function or not? Vertical line test. And it will only hit once, like this. Beep. So that's a function, right? It can't hit more than once. So look at this one. Beep. Beep. Is that a function?
No.
Nope. And it's asking what is not a function. So that would be my answer. Does that make sense? So if you draw a line that hits it twice, then we know it's not a function, or anytime more than once. This one, you could type it into your calculator, but my guess is this will be a non-calculator question. So all you have to do is you square each number to figure out what it's closest to. So what's 6 squared? 7 squared? 8 squared? 9 squared? Which number is closest to 55? 49. Does that make sense? You can put it in your calculator and get an exact answer, but my guess, you're not going to. All right, you got that? All right, is this correlation negative or positive? Negative. So we know our slope has to be negative. Which ones don't have a negative slope? A and D, they have positive slope. Our y-intercept, if I were to draw a line, what number is it near? What number? If I were to draw a line, where's the y-intercept near? Around 20, right? See how the y-intercept starts around 20? Which one would be my y-intercept? Negative 18.75 or positive 18.75?
Negative.
This is a negative number? Positive. A negative would be all the way down here if it says negative 20. But since it's a positive 20, that would be my y-intercept. You can also take one of these points, so like take 4, 9 and plug it in, and it should be around each other. If it's not, you know it's not the right answer. Does that make sense? You could always take one of these points and plug it in to see which one works. Next one, this is the last lesson of our unit. Causation and correlation. It's saying the higher the GPA, the less time watching TV. Is that causation? Does watching less TV cause your GPA to be higher?
No.
Not necessarily, right? So these two say causation, so what should we do with them? Now, the higher the GPA, the less time you watch TV. So is that a negative or a positive correlation? If it's a more and then it's a less, a negative, right? Because the higher the GPA, the less time I watch TV. So it'll look something like that. So it would be a negative correlation. Okay. Does that make sense? Yes. All right. First, is y by itself. These inequality questions are a little bit easier, I think, than what you're going to get. So remember, you always need to move around y, so it's by itself. So first, is the amount eating y or the variable?
The variable.
Variable. So is y smaller or bigger?
Bigger. Or smaller.
Smaller, right? My solution, my y is smaller. So remember, you can draw the man, and if it's smaller, it's under his feet. So which ones are not under the feet, if I were to draw the man?
A, B, or D.
Yep, A and D, because this would be above his head. Now, is the slope negative or positive? Positive, right? Look, this is my slope. A positive 1. So would it be going up or down?
Up.
Up, so what's your answer? C. And make sure you guys remember if it's solid or dotted. How would we know if it's solid or dotted?
If it's greater than or
Yeah, so if it doesn't have that line underneath it, remember that line is like a cheat sheet. It tells you make it solid. But if there is no line, it's dotted. Okay, so Ted is buying couches, and we see this keyword area. How do I find the area of a square? Length times width, right? They're going to say, oh, I'm going to give them the answer for perimeter. They're going to get tricked. But we know better, right? So we know we're multiplying polynomials. Because they're saying, what could I multiply to 4x minus 1 to get this answer? And luckily, they gave us answer choices. So the best way to go about this is I know I'm going to just multiply the first two, like 4x and 3x. What is 4x times 3x? 12x squared, right? Is that 12x squared? No, so that's not going to be right. What's 4x times 3x? 12x squared. 4x times 8x? So we know it's probably not going to be that. 4x times x? Good. So make sure you check your work too. You can FOIL, distributive property, however you want to do it. I could show you just in case you forgot. So I have 4x minus 1. Poor couple broke up. Poor 4x minus 1. But who's visiting both of them? X plus 2. They're still friends, right? Both couples. And then we multiply. What's 4x times x? 4x squared. What's 4x times 2? 8x, yep. What's negative 1 times x? And negative 1 times 2? Negative 2. And then we simplify. So we have 4x squared. What's 8 minus 1? 7x minus 2. Is that the answer I wanted to get? Yep, so I know that was. Do you see how the questions are not going to be really straight up? Some of them will be, but some of them are going to be a little more. See how it says DOK on your paper 3? You guys see this? This stands for the standard, and DOK 3 means the more work and rigorous. It's the more work and rigorous it means. Like it's how much work you're going to probably have to do. So like something that's straight up will be DOK 1. DOK 2 will be like a little more work, and DOK 3 will be like you have to probably think outside of the box.
Okay, they're not gonna have those on the questions, right?
I don't think so. I don't think so. But when you're practicing, I always usually will have the standard. This one. This is the one like the perfect square. Do you guys see that these are perfect squares and their differences? So I just take the square root. So what's the square root of 16? 4. So I have 4y, but what's half of 4? 2. So I'm going to make it square. Then, what's the square root of 1? 1, and make 1 plus 1 minus. Cool. But now we have to stop and think. Is there another difference of a perfect square?
Yeah, negative.
This one right here, right? Because what's the square root of 4?
2.
They want us to take it one step further. So what's the square root of 4?
2.
2y and 2y. We have a plus and a minus. And what's the square root of 1? And so these two and this one should be my answer.
What?
So which one has all three of those?
D.
D.
Oh.
You get what I did?
Wait, what did you do?
Yeah.
The second one, what did you do?
I saw it. Okay, well, this answer's not there, right? This answer's not there, so I know, like, I have to do something more. And so I looked at this and I saw, okay, actually 4 and 1 are perfect squares too. So I did that same trick, the square root trick. And so I ended up taking this, and this isn't going to be my answer anymore, and I simplified that to be 2y plus 1, 2y minus 1. And then this one can't be simplified because it's not a difference. So that's your answer. This says 4y squared plus 1. We have a 2y minus 1 and a 2y plus 1. Remember, they don't have to be in a particular order because they're all being multiplied. And I can give you the IXL to this perfect square, the difference of perfect squares. So if you guys want to practice this, then I can give you that IXL and I'll give you credit for it. It was an optional one. All right, next one. What could I do with my table? Plug it in, right? So you can sit there and plug it in, or you can sit and solve it. So first, what is something's being added over and over again? What's that called? It's linear, and it's our slope, right? So what's being added here? This is my y. What's being added here? 3. So 3 is being added here. And if something was being multiplied, what's that called? Exponential, right? So the change in y, I can see is 3. What's the change in x?
1.
1. So what is 3 over 1? 3. And so that would be your slope. Which one doesn't have a slope of 3?
B.
How much?
And
A and B. We can see they're trying to trick us by putting it in the y-intercept. Then you can either work backwards, because your y-intercept is when your x is what?
0.
0, right? So I can work backwards and subtract 3, or you can take one of these and plug it in and figure out which one works. So I could plug in like 5, and whichever one gives me 15.50 as my answer, I know is correct. Or you can work backwards. What's 650 minus 30? 350. And one more because it needs to be 0. What's 350 minus 30? Positive 0.5, so what's your answer?
C.
Do you guys get what I mean when I say plug it in now? Okay. Next one. Okay, this one's a little confusing. I'm going to skip it for now. Or do you want me to go over it right now?
I want you to go.
Okay, so this is substitution, and it's a weird kind of substitution. These are the sort of things you're going to see in your SAT, for sure. They love to try to, like, confuse you. So this is an SAT type question. So we got Browser, we got Abby, and we got Chuckles. And their combined age, which means we're adding, is 44, right? And they want it all, we can look at the answers, so we want it all in terms of Chuckles' age. So they give us some more information. They're saying that Browser is 6 years older than Abby. So we know that Abby's age plus 6 equals Browser, right? And they also tell me that Abby is 2 years younger than Chuckles. So we know that Chuckles' age minus 2 equals Abby's age, right? Are you guys with me so far? So right here, instead of A, they want it in terms of C. We already have that, right? What does A equal?
C minus 2.
C minus 2. So they want you to put C minus 2 instead of A. And right here, since we already have what A equals, instead of A, what do they want you to put for this A? C minus 2.
I was wondering where A
I just put C minus 2 instead of A. And that's your answer.
Where the A and B went.
Yeah.
Choices.
And so in your on your SAT, they would combine like terms. I don't know why they didn't do that here, but usually they would combine like terms. But here your answer would be C minus 2 plus 6 plus C minus 2 plus C equals 44. And they put it C and C minus 2 and C minus 2 plus 6. So it's like substitution. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It just, I kind of read the question. Do you get how I made these equations? Because right here, you get this equation, right? Like B plus A plus C. Like you get Browser plus Abby plus Chuckles equals 44. You get that part, right? And so it says Browser is 6 years older than Abby. So right here, I took Abby, and I added 6 to it to make Browser, right? Because that's what it's telling me. So I pointed to Browser and I said, okay, I know that Abby is 6 years older than Browser. I also know that Abby is 2 years younger than Chuckles. So Chuckles minus 2 would equal Abby. And so I just wrote those equations down here. And I can see the answer choices all have C's. So they want all the ages to be in terms of Chuckles. So we know this one's already has C. We know that A equals C minus 2, so they want us to use C minus 2 instead of A. And then right here, I have A plus 6 equals B. There is no Chuckles, but this question right here tells me that Chuckles, C minus 2 equals A. So they want us to plug it in like a substitution sort of problem to look like this.
So this will not be.
I just want to prepare you just in case. This is from Practice Milestone book, so I always just want to overly prepare you.
Okay.
But technically it is substitution. Nothing like this, I don't think, but it's technically substitution. It definitely will be under SAT. And remember studying for the SAT. Okay. Okay. Next one is box plots. Can I tell how many data points I have in a box plot?
No.
All it tells me is each interval 25%. So what does mode mean? Yeah, the reoccurring number, the number that's in there the most. Could I even tell from just looking at a box plot? No, so that can't be it. Median. That's this middle one. Do they have the same median? Yes. Yeah, so it can't be that. Range. On your IXL, it said excluding outliers. But see how it doesn't say excluding outliers here? And so because of that, this is it's your max minus your min. So technically 20 is your min here, and 100 is your max. Here 100 is your max, and 24 is your min. And so they would end up having different ranges. People are confused because on your IXL it would say excluding outliers, but if it doesn't say that, then you're subtracting the max. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so what's a pattern? It's saying what would the large pizza cost with 5 toppings? So, yeah. So what am I adding each time?
$1.
$1.50 for each topping. So what's 16 plus 150? 17.50. So what your answer be? Remember, don't do more work than you have to. How would I figure out if this is a function? Vertical line test. So which two can I cross out automatically? C and D, the ones that say horizontal line test. Then when I draw the line, beep, 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 beep. Does it hit more than once?
Yes.
Yep, so is it function?
Oh.
Be careful that you like read it carefully. That says not function. They'll try to trick you and you'll be so excited that you know. So I'll give you more information. I think 60, but I'm not going to say for certain. All right, this I didn't really teach you, and this is also algebra 2 that I always want to prepare you. But this is pretty easy. It says rationalize the denominator. And so you do know how to do this. I need to just show you. So, which one's the denominator? The bottom, right? To rationalize a denominator, all you do is you multiply the denominator to the top and the bottom.
Oh.
So it looks like this. I'm gonna pause. So rationalizing a denominator just means you multiply to the top and the bottom. So we just multiply radicals the same way we would always. So I'm gonna do the coefficients first. What's 2 times 2? 4. What's 8 times 8? 64. What is the square root of 64? 8. What's 4 times 8? 32. So the point of rationalizing a denominator is to get rid of the radical. So to do that, you just multiply it. Now I do the same thing with the top. I'll do that in black. What is 6 times 2?
12.
And 6 times 8? 48. And then we have to reduce it. What goes into 48? We just had it right here.
Oh.
6 and 8. That's why I like to simplify before I multiply, because you're just writing it over again, but it doesn't really matter. What goes into 6?
3 and 2.
What goes into 8? 4 and 2. And 4? 2 and 2. And then you just figure out who's going to prom, who's not. Who's already at prom? 12 is the early bird, right? Who's joining 12?
2.
This 2 and this 2. They could go from different schools because we're multiplying.
And then 2.
And these 2. Who's chilling in the crib, as what Lily will say? 3. Cool. What is 12 times 12? Or 12 times 2?
4.
Times 2? So you end up getting 48 radical.
Can you pause?
Yes. So look at it, see if you have any questions. Yes. There's one extra step. So really all you're doing is just multiplying the denominator. If you see that word denominator, just multiply the denominator times the numerator. I'm going to rewrite this answer right here. Is this numerator rational or irrational?
Irrational.
Because it has this, right? It's radical 3 perfect square.
No.
What about 32?
No.
Is that rational or irrational?
Irrational.
Just 32.
Irrational.
Rational. Now, let me ask you a question. Like, is this whole thing rational or irrational? Because the definition of rational is that it could be turned into a fraction, right? But if it has an irrational number in it, it's irrational.
For the whole thing.
Last thing, just you're simplifying the numbers right here. So what's the biggest number that can go into 48 and 32? Bigger. Which one? Bigger. 16. So if you started with a smaller one, you would just need to reduce it. And so what is 48 divided by 16? 3. And what's 32 divided by 16?
Oh.
Don't really only pay attention so that you rationalizing a denominator means you multiply the top and the bottom. And you know how to do the rest. Like the rest is multiplying radicals. Yes. Are you paying attention? Okay, we'll go over it. Okay. All I did was multiply the denominator times the top and the bottom. And then I just multiplied and simplified. And I ended up getting this right here. And I simplified it all. Then I just reduced the fraction. But I can't reduce a radical, so you would reduce what's outside the radical. All right, how do we get x by itself? Times 3. This is sign flip. No, because that number is positive. So I end up getting x and -3. Is x greater than or less than? Greater than. Greater than. So we would shade to the right. Which ones are not shaded to the right? C and B. Then open, circle, and dotted are the same thing. Solid and filled in are the same thing. So since there's no line underneath it, which one would be my answer? D. Does that make sense? All right, next one. You're just finding the GCF. What's the biggest number that go into all three? 4. What do we know about the GCF? What do we know? Where do we put the GCF? Outside. So what should be on the outside of all the parentheses?
4.
Which one has that?
8.
Don't do more work than you have to. Did everyone get that? Okay. What is the slope of the line? So remember, they're not going to say, TJ, you need to use the slope formula right now. Here is the slope formula. But they do give you the slope formula. So they'll give you slope formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. The most important is a lot of people forget how to label. So labeling, I go, it's my first x, my first y, my second x, my second y. And then I plug it in, plug it in. So I end up getting a negative 11 minus negative 3 and negative 1 minus 1. Don't forget that negative 3. If they give you a question that's this easy, they're going to know that you're going to mess up by not doing minus and negative. What does minus and negative turn into? 4. So what do I end up getting? Negative 8. What's negative 1 minus 1?
0.
That's plus 1.
Negative 2.
Negative 2. What's negative 8 divided by negative 2?
4.
All right, it takes an average of 8 hours for one person to do it. How much does it take 4 people to do it? 2. You just divide. Almost there. This ordered pair, what's the x coordinate?
1.
Negative 1. And what's the y?
Negative.
Negative 4. So what's your answer?
D.
D.
Just asking for the point. The coordinates. Right here. What do we do with negative 14?
Plug in.
Plug it in for x. So make sure you don't make it equal to it. Negative 14 minus 9 ends up being
I thought it was Y.
negative 23. You would plug this in for x. If it said f of x equals negative 14, that would mean I would plug it in for f of x. But if it's just f of that, that just means plug it in. Because instead of x, I want you to plug in. Does that make sense? Almost done. All right. So let's just look at the answer choices. First of all, is the biggest number 6 or 2 that can go in both of those? 6. So which 2 can I eliminate? What's the only, and we learned how to divide these and do all this last class. So I'm not going to go through the work. But what's the only difference between the A and C?
The last.
The constant, right? So what are you dividing each thing by? 6x squared, right? What is 66 divided by 6? 11. So what's your answer? C. Don't do more work than you have to. Figure out what is the difference between your answer choices. Figure out which one it is. Because the biggest thing with this test is not it being hard, it's it running out of time. What could I do with my answer choices? Plug them in. And you can see all the answer choices are different. So you can literally plug in 65 for x, and if you get 0, you know that's your answer. But when you're plugging in negative 2, if you do not put negative 2 in parentheses in your calculator, it will be wrong. You need to make sure if you are plugging it in, it's in your calculator like this. And so when you end up doing that, sorry, it's like that. When you end up doing that, you end up getting this answer. Or you could do the ACV chart, make sure everything's on one side, but multiplies negative 130 adds negative 63. Remember, it's the opposite. All right, 42 is what a lot of people have problems with, because a lot of people, exponential has been something that like a lot of people kind of forgot about. And so definitely do that quizzes and look over that. Make sure you understand that quizzes. That quiz, all the quizzes are your old texts. So it should get you familiar with like how to do it. And if you have problems, you can come in and ask me. But remember, all they give you on your formula sheet is this. You need to know that B is 1 plus or minus R. They're not going to give you that. And so A is your initial value. What's your initial value in this situation?
Oh, 1,000.
1,500, right? That's my A. And then if something's paying you, would that be plus or minus? Plus, right? Because I'm not actually withdrawing or taking it away. It's adding to my account. The bank's paying me. So it's 1 plus, and what's 5% as a decimal? 0.05. You'll have 0.5, whatever that answer is, you'll have that. Make sure you move it over twice. And then they're at 6 years, so you put 6 as your exponent. And you're just plugging that right in. You'll never have to do that by hand. You would plug that right into your calculator, and what answer do you end up getting? And see, it says TOK 3. That's something where you would need to figure out, if you see a percentage sign, you know it's exponent. Almost always, if you see percent, you know I'm doing exponent. Or if something's doubling, tripling, something like that, you know it's exponent. All right, this one, right behind Peyton's head. See the box method, what we did over there? Where we made a 3, this one you would make a 3 by 3 box. And you just multiply it, or I can just multiply each term times each term. Do you guys want me to do this? Okay. So, what is 4x cubed times 2x squared? 8x to the what? Fifth. So remember, when we're multiplying, that's when you add the exponents. When you're adding, you're just combining the like terms. What's 4x cubed times negative 3x? Negative 12x to the what?
You said what?
What's 4x cubed times negative 3x?
X over 5? Or a third?
Or to the third, right? Or to the fourth. My bad. Because what's this invisible exponent right here? 1, right? So let me start that over. I should have drew the lines first. So first we did this. Everyone got that, right? This one right here. Then I do it to the next one. So I did negative 3x times 4x cubed. And that's an invisible 1 right there. So I add the exponents to get negative 12x to the fourth. Then you do it again. I don't think there's going to be one this difficult, to be honest. But just in case, I always want to overprepare. What's 4x cubed times 8? 32x. Then I'm going to go to my next one. 7x squared times 2x squared. 14x to the fourth. And I'm lining them up to their with like terms. What's 7x squared times negative 3x? Yep, negative 21x cubed. Negative 7x times 8. Good. 56x squared. Last one. Negative 2 times 2x squared. Negative 4x squared. Notice we're starting here now. Negative 2 times negative 3x. Positive, right? Because it's 2. 2 negatives. And negative 2 times 8. Negative 16. And now we combine our like terms. So this one we can bring down to get 8x to the fifth. What's negative 12 plus 14? 2x to the fourth. 32 minus 21. 56 minus 4.
52x.
And then plus 6x minus 16. I know. So which one's your answer? And remember, I'm putting this on YouTube too, so this is being recorded. So like if you don't remember, or maybe I would practice these tests, I put them on Google Classroom over and over. And so if you don't remember something, make sure you can always watch this video and kind of fast forward to whichever one you want to look at. All right, is this the last one? Beautiful. So you're given your formula sheet, and remember recursive and explicit. If they want you to use it, you'll either see an a to the n minus 1 or something like this, or an a to the n. That's explicit and recursive. And recursive formulas they give you, they're like recursive formula is. But what does recursive mean? Like if I said I have a reoccurring tree, what does that mean? It's happening over and over. So the same dream I had yesterday, I'm gonna have tomorrow, right? And so this is saying this is recursive because this means the term before. Or the y before. And this is on your quizzes for 2A. So if you forgot this, that 2A quizzes has this on it. And so this just means your term or your y before. So you're taking your term before, and this is what you're doing. This is called the difference. If it was multiplied, it would be called your ratio. And so this is recursive. So what is it saying? It's saying take the term before, and what should we do to it? Add 3. So what should we do to 4? Add 3. What do we get?
7.
And we just keep adding 3, 16, 19, 22. So we just added 3 each time. So if I wanted to get to the 100th term, if they only gave me the recursive, I would literally have to add 3 100 times, right? Explicit is like a rule. It makes my life a lot easier. If I wanted to get the 100th term, all I would have to do is plug in 100 for n and solve. But this just means your y-intercept is 4. So we're starting at 4. And what are you doing each time? What's your slope? Adding, right? Because it's your slope. So you think it's multiplying, but really, like if I'm plugging in a term, it would be 4 times 3. That's just to get your term number. But here it's just adding by 3 each time. So what's 3? 4 plus 3? And then 10. You can see it's going to be the exact same thing. So this can be like what your open-ended question looks like, and it says determine whether the two sequences are the same. So are they the same?
Yes.
Yeah, so make sure you are clear because your open-ended are worth a lot more than your multiple choice. So you want to make sure you're, especially if you know the answer, that you're clear with it. Then which function is recursive and which is explicit? So you would mention that this one's recursive because it tells you to add 3, take the term before and add 3. Explicit is almost like a rule. So I can get any term I want by plugging it in for n. And they give you the explicit and recursive formula. So if you look up here, this is your last one. So let me just show you your formula sheet. So right here, here's all the formulas you get. But do you see this as arithmetic?
Yep.
What does arithmetic mean? Linear, or adding over and over, right? So this says take the term before, and the D just means your difference. Explicit could look like this, or it could look like slope-intercept form. And then right here, where's geometric? What does geometric mean? Multiplying. So your R stands for what you're multiplying by. So recursive just means a rule. It's like take the term before and multiply this. This one's saying, okay, if I'm trying to get the 15th term, but what does a to the 1 mean? Does anyone remember?
Doesn't it initial?
Not your y-intercept, though. Your what term? First term. Don't get confused by y-intercept and first term. So like right here, your first term here would be 7. I tried to do that, but your first term would be 7 because it's your A1. Slope-intercept form would be, it would start with your B. Does that make sense? All right, so